And I think rethinking about how do we use validated testing to understand not just what, blood markers and stool markers and all these things say, but as well, what else is changing and how are we moving to like a systematic better than we were before. And people love numbers. Doctors love numbers. People love numbers. Everybody loves numbers. Yeah. And so it's like, how do we use those to better describe the picture as change is happening?
What if aging isn't about slowing down, but leveling up? I'm Dr. Isaac Jones. This is the Longevity Leaders Podcast.
Hi, I'm Dr. Ashley Beckman with the Longevity Leaders Podcast. And today I have Shaina from Novel Biome.
Yeah. Hi.
How are you?
Good. Enjoying the conference.
All right. You guys have a very interesting company. Tell us a little bit about what it is.
Yeah. So we are a manufacturer of FMT or fecal microbiota transplantation products. And so the idea here is we kind of fit in the space of like what happens if your gut is missing some of the key species or some of the building blocks. How do you replace this? So this would be taking a healthy microbiome and transplanting it into someone that has an unhealthy gut. And because it's coming from being human derived, it actually is able to engraft and stay there. And so that's where the transplant part comes in. So you're actually taking a healthy gut, transplanting in there, and it becomes your new gut. And then that will kind of grow and change with you once it's engrafted.
So what are some of the screening processes you have for your donors?
Yeah. So there are, we kind of sub this into there are the regulated ones. So like ensuring there's nothing pathogenic in blood or stool or urine. But then we go one step further and really want to understand what makes a healthy gut. So all of our donors are under 30 because we know the gut, the wheels fall off as you age. And so we want to ensure that our donors fall within that. Vaginally born and breastfed, that's what starts the instructions for the gut. You look at physical activity, we look at their diet, you look at their and their family health history for any diseases that are tied back to the gut, autoimmune diseases, metabolic conditions, cancers, GI conditions, neurological, neurodevelopmental, neurodegenerative diseases, all of these things we're looking at, and that all of that's taken out of our donor pool. The potential of that transferring, we just want to avoid that possibility. You look at vaccine history. We also look at they had to have less than 5 instances of antibiotics in their life. And a year before and none during while they're in the donor program. And then we're also looking, they can't have any vaccines while in the program. And then we categorize them based on what vaccines they have. So we have a whole history of their vaccines as well.
Nice.
Yeah.
So what is something that this generally helps with most that you guys see clinically?
Yeah. So what it's most widely known for is for treating C. difficile infections, so which is a pathogenic overgrowth from a gut. So it's still a huge issue. About 30,000 people in the U.S. die a year from C. diff infections still. But the research has expanded. So, the first areas that we saw it pop up was in the GI conditions, so like IBS, SIBO, and ulcerative colitis. But since then, because of the gut-brain connection, we're seeing things like autism spectrum disorder, MS, Parkinson's, and Alzheimer's disease is the newest area we're seeing more of it, as well as anti-aging properties, because really tackling how the gut seems to be that first domino that falls in kind of some of the immune and inflammation issues and this brain fog. Obesity is another area, or metabolic conditions as well. But the area just keeps growing because what we're learning is that so much of the immune system is derived from the gut. So now we're seeing autoimmune diseases coming up. We know that estrogens and testosterone and other hormones are derived from the gut. So now we're seeing a real growth in places like PCOS, endometriosis, fertility. All of these, we're trying to look at like what role is the gut playing here and what happens if we reset that to a healthy version, how much of these other things start to kind of realign and heal.
What's a typical course of treatment, or how often would somebody utilize the FMT?
I think it's, we call it the one and done therapy most of the time. And in anti-aging, the idea would be that you would have to kind of top up to kind of counteract the natural kind of decline. But most of it is this, we categorize it into a loading dose. So this is a bolus dose. This is where most of that initial engraftment happens, that big switch out. And then maintenance phase, which is daily doses really depend on how chronic the disease is, what disease you're kind of tackling, and how many interconnected systems are probably misaligned.
Right.
So in diseases where very gut focused and nothing else is going on, you see shorter courses where you're looking at interconnected with like the brain or the immune system. the courses get a little bit longer because what we're doing is what will engraft at the beginning when the gut is really leaky or the inflammation is really high, is going to shift and all of that turns down. And so you want to support being able to kind of supplement those species as they can, or as the environment becomes more hospitable to them.
Yeah. It's so fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's something very interesting because most of my clients have, of course, they have leaky gut and they have autoimmune issues or Lyme and mold. And again, we check the gut, of course, on labs, but it's often this whole cleanup period of trying to get these pathogens and viruses under control. But if we can kind of jumpstart that gut process, I think they would feel better faster.
Yeah. And I think one of the interesting things that's happening in this field, and this originally came out in oncology, and now we're seeing it in stem cells as well. And I think we're going to continue to see this space grow, is the idea that do medications or treatments work better when the gut is healed before you do them?
Right.
And so in oncology, a lot of people are non-responsive to immunotherapies. And so one of the really cool things in the research space is sometimes someone goes, okay, so if the immune system is dry from the gut and we know these non-responders have really dysbiotic guts, what if we fix that? Right. And then you're shifting these non-responders to responders. Then it became, well, sometimes stem cells aren't as effective as we think they're going to be.
Right.
What if we tackle the gut first?
Yeah.
Do they become? And so, we're seeing that people are starting to pair these things together. And not only are you healing the gut, but everything else you're doing starts to work better.
Yeah.
Because I think the body's able to process and really detox better and really able to, you're putting out more fires and then creating a base that they're able to process and even take apart medications better and use them because the gut has those building blocks to do.
And they're just absorbing nutrients better as well. So it should amplify the effects of what people are doing.
Yeah.
For kids, what's the youngest age that someone can take this?
Yeah, we always want, when we're, working with pediatrics in that space, we want them to have a diagnosis before you're treating. And one of the really interesting things, I think when we think of peds, we think like, okay, so everything's really underdeveloped, but the gut actually becomes adult-like between 3 and 5. So you want to stay in that, you don't want to go younger than that, I think, because I don't think it's going to engraft the way that you want it to. It's not going to be long lasting because there's so much shifting. But in that 3 to 5 space, their gut is really built as it's going to go for it. It shifts, it changes with, all of your life experiences, but we would consider it adult life. So it's a mixture of like really knowing why you're doing it. And the other side would be, you want to hit in that space where now we consider it adult like. So like anything under 3, I don't think you would get the benefits that you would be expecting because the gut's still shifting so much.
I was thinking of kids with PANS and pandas and things.
ISD is a really big space. We're seeing a lot. ADHD is kind of growing as well.
Yeah.
And a lot of these things, especially I'm a brain person, so I know a little more about that space, but it's interesting in these neurodevelopmental diseases and these developmental diseases, everything works through critical windows. So your gut hits critical points that triggers the immune system to go through its critical development, the brain. And so we're finding that the gut in these neurodevelopmental diseases is underdeveloped. And then the immune system's underdeveloped. And the brain's not hitting its critical milestones the way we're expecting. And so what we're thinking is like, is this one of the beginning parts of the systems not being given the next set of instructions? And so I always look at it like the gut is one instruction manual. You have to finish step 1 before you can go on to step 2. And so if you only get halfway through step 1, then the immune system doesn't know everything it's supposed to do. And then the gut-brain communication doesn't have that flow that it's supposed to. And I think that's like we're seeing in these early kind of pediatric cases that we're really looking that it's not meeting the windows it's supposed to. And so how is that then triggering all these other long-term responses?
Yeah, I'm seeing so much neuroinflammation both in kids and adults.
Yeah.
And it's a really big issue because a lot of these pathogens create brain inflammation or their waste mostly too. And so it's a really big problem because you're trying to work on detox and healing the gut and what the downstream issues are from the neurotransmitters that really aren't optimal.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of this mess. And so this seems like it would be a really good step to help those cases.
Yeah. And we're seeing this new concept of leaky gut, leaky brain.
Yeah.
And when you go from a developmental perspective, in utero, the same cells that make up the gut lining are the same cells that make up the gut blood barrier. And I think So we're rethinking what leaky gut means. And I think how much we're seeing that has grown. But I think some of the neuroinflammation, some of the diseases we're seeing in the brain at the rate that we are, maybe tied to this more leaky nature where things are going where they're not supposed to go.
Yeah.
And the system is not set up to deal with it.
No.
Stuff that's supposed to be on the inside, that's on the outside.
Breaking through.
Yeah. And so you have all of these systems love homeostasis. And as soon as they can't be in that space, they don't know how to deal with it. And I think sometimes we think of the brain as being so independent and separated. And we really have to start rethinking that because even I think every 3 weeks, there's a known neurotransmitter that's really dictated by the gut. So when we started, it was serotonin, then we heard about dopamine, now we're into GABA, neuroepinephrine.
Yes.
All of the big hitters that we consider the drivers of the brains, dysbiotic set, then now you're not making enough GABA or neuroepinephrine. And like that, the long-term impacts of that is concerning.
It is. It's nice because we can test for those.
Yeah.
And it would be very interesting to kind of see that downstream effects after someone's been on this for a few months.
Yeah. So it ranges from a month to 4 months.
Okay.
I always say if it's chronic or multiple systems, you're looking at that 3 to 4 months because you really want to support, because not only are you fixing all these issues, but you now have to go back, especially adults that have been chronically ill, rebuilding the diets. Because we say we can give you all the microbes you need. If you don't feed them, you will end up right where you are now because they're going to die off. And the ones that survive are the same ones that are currently surviving. So you really do there's a systematic change of now you have to feed these microbes so they live. And the broader you feed it, the more they'll live and thrive and, become the sustained environment. And so it's more of a holistic approach because you can give this, but then you have to change the diet. You've got to sleep better. You've got to exercise so that you're giving your body everything you need to keep them alive because it's its own independent ecosystem that you're interacting with. It's very symbiotic in nature. And I think it's a shift in thinking because we like to think of we are the driving force. But really there's more microbes than there is us. And so we have to really appreciate that, eating diversely, sleeping well, and how all of those then impact how well the system's able to continue going forward.
I'm always reminding clients that we're a home to the microorganisms in our body, and they're often dictating our choices.
Yeah, well, food cravings,
the cravings. It's not about lack of willpower. It's that they're very powerful and they want food, and their food is usually sugar or, different vegetables and things and fibers, but they can be very persistent and loud.
Yeah.
And it's very important to, be humbled a little bit, but that we are really this magnificent home for many things.
Yeah. And I think that's where we have to kind of think about the whole matters. And I think that's why FMT is so different because it's taking a whole copy, from a person and giving it to somebody else versus picking out strains. And I think maybe one day we'll get there. We'll fully understand the interaction between all of these things and we become very bacterial focused.
Yes.
Yeah. But that's only part of a whole. And so even understanding what metabolites need to be there for those bacteria to thrive, when you just take out certain strains and say these ones are the most important.
Yeah.
I think it's that we see that they don't engraft, but we also see that it's not the fix that you think. If it's only these 4 bacteria you need, why doesn't everything get better? And I think it's because you need a little bit of everything.
Yeah, we've isolated these strains and things this is because we do it even for mold. It's this one will help ochratoxin A or this one helps this.
Yeah.
And even with all the lab testing, people can get so, myopic and focus on these very specifics when it's a quite complex picture.
Yeah. And I think we like it to be simple because it feels we can tackle it.
Yeah.
And I think, the Human Microbiome Project was this idea we're gonna know everything. And it literally came out that everyone's a little bit different.
Right.
And it shifts, it changes, which is such a positive. It can be positive or negative, but you have the ability to make change. And so I say there are cases where you have dysbiosis, but you can recover from it.
Yes.
Changing your diet, taking a probiotic or a postbiotic to help kind of support those species that are there, but just low in number.
Right.
But when you start missing them, you kind of have to, it's like reseeding a garden versus fertilizing it. And so understanding where do people sit, what's missing, and or why aren't they responding, and could it be the gut? And then looking, I think, at a holistic picture of like fixing the gut and kind of wanting stool tests and things to change,
Right.
but as well as looking at symptom measures and quality of life as a whole picture. So like, yes, you have new bacteria in there, and the tests don't test for everything, so we don't know what everything is yet.
Right.
But also, like, do you feel better? Are you moving in the right direction?
Right.
And I think rethinking about how do we use validated testing to understand not just what, blood markers and stool markers and all these things say, but as well, what else is changing and how are we moving to like a systematic better than we were before? And people love numbers. Doctors love numbers. People love numbers. Everybody loves numbers. Yeah. And so it's like, how do we use those to better describe the picture as change is happening?
Well, I think this is an amazing addition to people's practice. And again, to help their clients exponentially. Where can we find your products?
Yeah. So you can reach out to Novel Biome. On our website, we've got blogs. We've got to kind of walk you through what do we know right now. And, we want to chat with practitioners. That's really where we start. How do we educate you? What are you looking at? What does your patient population look like? How are you currently tackling these things? And what are the patients that are your question marks?
Yes.
And those are normally the ones you're going to want to talk to us about that are like, what you're doing works for 98% of your cases. What about those other ones? What else could there be? How do we tease that story apart? And then how do we support you and best, tackling that from either from our perspective, or sometimes it's that maybe this isn't what they need right now. There's something else first. And try to, have those conversations so everybody can kind of, understand what we know, we can understand what you know, and then how do we work together to best supply this?
Yeah, that's very helpful. We all have complex cases and some outliers that don't fit the mold. So always good. And especially you guys see so many cases and things like that. So just to have that education piece and information can be very helpful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Longevity Leaders podcast. Our Longevity Leaders community is on mission to transform 100 million lives by 2040. If you enjoyed this show, please share this with somebody that you know, especially another doctor or physician, but also click that follow button. Until next time, stay strong and live long.